So guys, what if Naruto was daughter's dirty fantasies and fall love with Himawari movie? Himawari, the 16-year-old daughter of Naruto and Hinata Uzumaki, was currently giggling perversely as she spied on her parents making love in their room. As she did this, the teenage girl couldn't help but rub herself and moan in ecstasy as she imagined herself in her mother's position. NNN, daddy. More she moaned out as she thrusted her fingers in and out of her dripping snatch. One of her hands came up to her bare breasts and she began to tweak and pinch her nipple, which sent another jolt of pleasure throughout her body, causing her back to arch. Oh. Kami-sama. Kami-sama. Daddy. Make me cum daddy. She screamed as she played with herself, continuing to imagine her fathering her as hard and as passionately as he had her mom. No. Himawari thought to herself angrily, head me harder. Faster. Head take me in all sorts of ways and absolutely wreck me. Oh Kami. Daddy, I need you so bad. She thought to herself as she rolled onto her side and continued to play with her breasts while thrusting her fingers into her waiting snatch faster and faster. Meanwhile, outside in the hallway, Burrito could hear his sister whimpering pitifully, almost as if she was in pain. Knocking on her door, he announced that he was coming in to check on her. Before Himawari could shout at her brother to go away, her door opened and Burrito got a very clear view of his sister's private parts. Furious at his interruption, Himawari grabbed her pillow and threw it at him. Get the hell out of my room, you dumbass. Don't stand there and stare at me like that. The blonde teenager quickly left the room and rushed to try and find some way to scrub the image from his mind. Seeing his sister in the middle of masturbating was not something he ever wanted to see. Himawari sighed as she collapsed back on her bed and just laid there. Her nether regions were on fire and she was still horny as hell. But after something like that, she just didn't have it in her anymore to finish up. Damn it, Boruto. Why do you have to be so stupid sometimes? She thought angrily. Later that day, Himawari had been in a bad mood most of the day, and the only person that knew why, besides Himawari herself, was too freaked out to tell anyone. When her mother tried to pry it out of her, the young Uzumaki girl just shook her head and walked off without speaking a word to her mother. Hinata, being the concerned mother that she was, requested that her husband talk to their daughter about what might be troubling her. She hoped that, as her daughter's preferred parent, they both knew she was a daddy's girl, that Himawari would be willing to open up to him. As Himawari swung on a swing set in the park, she was caught by surprise when her father sat down beside her on the second swing and began to speak to her. Hima-chan, how are you? Your mother tells me that you've been acting frustrated all day. Is something the matter? Blushing brightly at being so near her one true love, Himawari stopped swinging and began to shuffle her feet around as she tried to think of something to say to him. After a moment of silence, she spoke up, I am frustrated daddy, in love with someone, but Hess taken already, Hess married, and he'll never see me the same way I see him. Please don't ask who. Because there is no way I'm telling you daddy, a girl has to keep her secret sometimes. She declared with a wink to her father, but can you give me some advice? Naruto walked over and helped his daughter up off of the swing before bringing her in for a tight hug. Without realizing it, Naruto had just caused his daughter to turn so red she felt like fainting, just as her mother used to do so long ago. Oh Hima-chan, I'm so sorry I've had to go through something like this all alone, he said sadly. When Himawari went to speak up, Naruto placed a gentle kiss atop her head, causing her to begin sputtering in embarrassment. Chuckling a bit, Naruto walked with his daughter over to a bench and sat down with her leaning against him, her head resting on his shoulder and his arm wrapped around her, holding her close. Did I ever tell you that I used to be in love with another woman before your mother and I got together? Himawari was shocked to hear this. Looking up into her daddy's eyes, she smiled at him and poked his whiskered cheek. Tell me. I'm really curious now daddy. Giggling a bit, Naruto nodded and began to tell her his tale. She was one of the first friends I ever made, but only a day after meeting each other, she began to treat me like dirt like so many other people in the village did. She had developed a crush on Sasuke Uchiha, your friend Sarada's father, he explained. Himawari frowned and hugged her father tight. That sounds horrible daddy. Nodding slowly, Naruto stared out at the setting sun and nodded. It hurt, but I still believed we could be friends. When I saw her in the academy later on, I kinda thought it was meant to be. I had such a crush on her back then, and I asked her out almost every day, but every single time, she'd punch me as hard as she could and yell at me. She'd berate me and tell me it'd never be as good as Sasuke was, he continued with a sigh. Looking skyward as he leaned back on the bench, he chuckled dryly. We were put together on the same genin team too. I really thought we were meant to be. I did everything for her. I saved her on missions. I gave her absolutely everything, and all she could think of was Sasuke this and Sasuke that. It was so frustrating, he continued. At this point, Himawari knew exactly who her father was talking about and she wanted nothing more than to go and slug the bitch. However, she sat still and continued listening to her father. Then, she made me promise her that it'd bring Sasuke back to her when he betrayed the village, and, you know how I am about my promises, I nearly died trying to bring him back, and still I kept to my promise, despite the fact that it only held me back in the end. Himawari frowned and hugged her father tight around his midsection. Oh daddy. Naruto sighed and shook his head. Long story short, we eventually fought again, and we nearly killed each other after a long war. We both lost an arm, but I finally succeeded in my promise of bringing him back to Konoha. Frowning at this point, Naruto shook his head. By now, you probably know exactly who I'm talking about. When he returned, it didn't happen right away. But Sasuke eventually returned her affections and married her. Sakura Haruno, now Uchiha, don't get me wrong, I'm very happy with your mother, but it stung something fierce that even after everything I did for her, and even after he tried to kill her and me on numerous occasions, she'd still choose to be with him. Sasuke was not a good person, Naruto explained to his daughter. Confused by this, Himawari looked into her father's eyes searchingly, but he was never punished. If he did so many bad things, why was he never punished for any of it? She questioned, unable to believe that someone that bad could get away with everything scot-free. Naruto sighed and shook his head in disappointment. One thing you have to understand, sweetie, is that the people of this village have always loved Sasuke, regardless of how terrible a person has been. On top of that, Sakura and I vouched for him. I know, it's stupid, but I was bound by my promise to Sakura, and like I've said to you before. Himawari sighed and smacked her father upside the head. You can be a real idiot, sometimes daddy. Sasuke should have been punished for his crimes, not pardoned. She exclaimed angrily, and Sakura's an idiot for choosing someone like him too. You're the best guy anyone could ever ask for, daddy. Ananadame Hokage chuckled, he just couldn't help it. Hugging his daughter closer, he gently rubbed her back up and down, sending chills through her body. You're sweet, Hima-chan, but I'm really nothing all that special, he said. You may think your mother was a backup girl or a second choice if Sakura didn't work out, but that's just not true, he explained. Himawari frowned at this and decided to ask, what do you mean, daddy? Naruto smiled down at his daughter and began to explain, your mother and I gradually fell in love over time. I first really started noticing her after she confessed her love for me during Pain's assault on Konoha. What really cemented it for me though was a genjutsu we were caught in that showed me just how she felt for me. It helped me to realize my feelings for her, and I ended up proposing to her some time later. We've been very happy together, and I got over Sakura pretty early on in our relationship. When his daughter went to speak, Naruto held up his hand to silence her. Hima-chan, do you know why I told you that story? When she shook her head no, he sighed and patted her head gently, treating her as if she were a mere child. Sweetie, I wanted you to understand that there might be somebody else out there for you, someone better. One that will treat you right and make you happier than you could ever be with that married man. You still have so much life ahead of you, and so much time remaining to find your missing half. Don't try to rush it, okay sweetheart? Himawari puffed out her cheeks and swatted her father's hand off her head before turning away from him. That's not what I want, daddy. I don't care about any of those other guys. Hess the only one for me and that's final. Naruto sighed softly and shook his head. If you say so, sweetheart, I just don't want you to end up heartbroken. I love you very much. You're my most priceless treasure, Hima-chan. You and Boruto both. Nuzzling into her father's chest, Himawari closed her eyes and just breathed in his scent, blushing and smiling happily all the while. I love you, daddy, very much, she said quietly. Ami, I hope Shess not in love with Sasuke. I don't need my daughter becoming a dang Sasuke fangirl. He thought to himself in silence as he gently stroked his daughter's hair. 3 days later, when Hinata found out that her daughter was in love with a married man, she grew concerned and had tried to speak with Himawari about it. However, every time she tried, her baby girl would clam up and refuse to speak on the subject. Instead, Shess and her mama glare before going off to either her room or someplace else, just so long as she was away from her mother. Now, however, Himawari was in the backyard practicing the hand seals for a technique she had been trying to learn for the past 3 months. If she could just get this technique down and perform it correctly, then her dream might actually come true. At least, that was her hope. When she finally got all the hand seals down correctly, Himawari looked in her notes for the seal she would have to inscribe on the ground around her if she wanted to perform this particular technique. They were rather complicated, but she was in Uzumaki, damn it. Seals were in her blood and she knew what she was doing. At least that's what she told herself. As it was, well, she was, indeed, skilled in the art of Fuinjutsu. This was a seal that was beyond her skill level, and yet, here she was, being stubborn as hell, and trying to figure out one of the most complicated seals she had ever seen. Taking a deep breath, Himawari began to draw the seal on the ground around her, being very careful not to screw up a single character, line, or anything else that might cause this technique to go wrong. This was a one-shot thing, and if she didn't get it right, who knows what the heck might happen. Some time later, once she had finished, Himawari went about collecting everything and made sure that she had all her things that she wanted to take with her to wherever this seal would send her, or to be more specific, when this seal would send her. Focusing her chakra into the seal beneath her as well as throughout her body, Himawari called out, time reversal. Release. In an instant, the seal beneath her lit up in a brilliant green glow and a pillar of light shot up where she was standing, covering the entire circumference of the seal and alerting everyone within the village that something big was happening. When Naruto and Hinata arrived on the scene, they saw their daughter disappearing in the light, but not before she sent them one last smile and mouthed the words, "I love you," to the both of them. As soon as she was gone, Naruto stood wide-eyed in horror while his wife fell to her knees and began to sob. Their precious baby girl was gone, and they had no idea where she was now or what on earth had happened to her. Naruto was snapped out of his stupor when one of his Anbu pointed out what remained of the seal to him. Walking over, the blonde Uzumaki knelt down and ran his fingers over the destroyed seal, trying to make sense of what he was seeing. "This is a pretty complex seal. It's missing a lot of parts, but from what little I can see, I can't help but wonder how little Hima-chan could have worked something like this out," he said. Hinata looked at her husband and walked over to him, kneeling down and clinging to him tightly. "See, can you bring her back? Can you bring our little girl back to us, Naruto-kun?" she questioned hopefully. The Nanadame Hokage sighed and shook his head in the negative. "No, I'm afraid I can't." Whatever kind of seal this was, it was a one-use only seal, and in order to create a reverse seal to counter its effects and bring our daughter back to us, it'd have to see the whole seal as it was before it was used. In order to do that, it'd need to use some powerful time reversal technique or a seal to reverse time for this small area here, so we could see what the seal looked like. Only then could I recreate the seal if need be and create a counter seal. All in all, it's a long process that might take years to complete. Our daughter could be gone for a very long time. Hinaheim, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry." At hearing this, all Hinata could do was cling to her husband tightly and sob into his chest. Their daughter was gone and they might never get her back. Why did Hima-chan do this? Naruto thought to himself, "Sweetheart, whatever is going on with you, I just hope you're safe." In the past 16 years after the Kyuubi attack and Naruto's birth graduation day, Himawari screamed out as she fell through a portal and landed roughly on the ground outside the Hokage Tower of the past. Standing up, she brushed herself off and groaned in discomfort. "Ugh, that was really unpleasant," she said as she continued to pat herself down. Looking around at her surroundings, she noticed the Hokage Tower a short distance away, as well as a bunch of people walking about in the street, going about their daily business. Nodding her head as she came to a decision, she walked into the Hokage Tower and proceeded up to his office. Smiling politely at the Hokage's secretary, Himawari bowed to her and began to speak. "Hello mom, is Hokage-sama in?" she queried. The secretary looked up from her work to see who had addressed her. When she did, she went wide-eyed at what she was seeing. It was almost like looking at a female Naruto. Only she had blue hair and some of the brightest blue eyes she had ever seen. Shaking herself out of her stupor, the secretary offered Himawari a smile and asked, "Hello, yes, Hokage-sama is in, and no, Hess not busy. May I ask what you're doing here and what your name is so I can note it down in my logbook please?" Himawari smiled and nodded her head giddily. "My name is Himawari Uzumaki, and I have some personal business with Hokage-sama that we need to discuss. It's really hush-hush type stuff that I can't speak to anyone about but him. I'm sorry," she exclaimed, bowing apologetically to the secretary immediately afterwards. The secretary nearly dropped her pen from the shock of hearing the girl's last name, Uzumaki. "So, are you related to Naruto Uzumaki by any chance?" she questioned curiously. Nodding her head excitedly, Himawari said, Yep. Naruto-kun and I are, cousins, but Hess never met me before, so he doesn't know about me yet. That's kinda part of what I need to talk to Hokage-sama about. Again, please don't tell anyone." The secretary nodded in understanding before motioning towards the office door. "Go ahead and enter. Please remember to be polite when speaking with Hokage-sama," she directed politely. Himawari nodded and entered the Hokage's office, closing the door behind her before turning around to face the Sandaime Hokage. When he motioned to the seat across from him, Himawari bowed gratefully to him and took the seat across from him, watching as he resumed doing paperwork for a short while longer before he returned his gaze to her. "Hello young one, as you are no doubt already aware, I am Hiruzen Sarutobi, the Sandaime Hokage of Konoha. You are new to my village, are you not? Might I ask for your name and what your purpose is here?" he questioned curiously. Himawari glanced around before looking to the Hokage and smiling awkwardly. First, can you please dismiss all your Anbu? What we're about to talk about is really hush-hush stuff and I don't want anybody to know about it besides you, okay?" Hiruzen smiled and nodded his head before making a signal with his hand for his guards to leave. Once they were gone, the Sandaime Hokage put up the silencing seals and looked her in the eyes. "Alright young one, you can speak freely now." The young woman smiled happily and waved at the old man. "Okay then, Hiya. I'm Himawari Uzumaki and I'm actually from Konoha. I was born here, I'm Naruto-kun's daughter from the future. Hence the whiskers and my looks and everything," she explained. Blinking in shock at this, Hiruzen soon quirked a brow and asked, "Is there any particular reason you traveled back in time? And for that matter, how did you traverse time to return to this particular time period?" he wondered aloud. Himawari blushed deeply and looked anywhere but at Hiruzen's wrinkled face. I came back using an experimental sealing technique so I could be with my daddy. She blurted out somewhat hesitantly, I'm in love with Naruto-kun and I couldn't have him in the future, so I decided it'd just go back into the past and be with a Naruto-kun that was my age, but, at the same time, I need to make sure he hooks up with my mom, Hinata Hyuga, she explained. Hiruzen looked astonished at this for just a moment before he burst into laughter. When Himawari puffed out her cheeks and gave him a glare, he only laughed harder. What so dang funny I'm being serious here, she exclaimed angrily. Calming himself after a while, the aged Hokage raised his hand in a calming gesture and began to explain himself. I'm not laughing at you, Himawari-chan, it's just, Naruto is so hung up on a girl named Sakura Haruno, while she has eyes only for Sasuke Uchiha. Meanwhile, your mother has her eyes set on Naruto-kun. The mere fact that he actually ends up marrying her after all is just music to these old ears, that's all. Smiling at this, Himawari began to bounce giddily in her seat as she prepared to ask a favor of the wizened old man. Hey Hokage-sama, I have a big favor to ask of you, she began, can you please put daddy, mommy, and me on the same team together? I know it might screw up the teams you had planned, but I need to make sure mom and dad get together so it'll be born, that, and, well. Hiruzen smiled softly at this and reached over to ruffle the teenage girl's hair. You want to be close to Naruto-kun, so he'll fall in love with you as you're in love with him, am I right? Blushing fiercely, Himawari could only nod yes rapidly before covering her face with her hands. I can't help it. I just love Naruto-kun so much. I don't know how it happened, but. Sighing, the aged Hokage got up and walked around his desk where he then pulled Himawari into a hug. You can't control your feelings for someone, Himawari-chan. The heart wants what the heart wants, and if yours says that you just have to be with your father, then that's who you're meant to be with, no matter what it takes, he said with a grandfatherly smile on his face. Himawari watched as Hiruzen walked back around to his side of the desk before he pulled out some paperwork and pushed it across the desk to her. Fill this information out, sign where it says to sign, and it'll get the information filed away. If you have any questions or concerns, feel free to ask me and I'll help you come up with something plausible to write down, alright? Nodding in understanding, the young woman went about filling out the necessary information, occasionally asking Hiruzen for help fabricating some information when necessary. Once they were all finished, Hiruzen put the paperwork aside for the moment before he wrote her a note and handed it over to her. Take this to room 201 in the academy and show it to Iruka Yamino. They'll know what to do with you after Hess read it, he'll get everything sorted out for you on my end. Himawari nodded in thanks before she took off like a bolt of lightning to go and see her father at the academy. She dearly hoped he'd be happy to see her. Another Uzumaki like him, maybe had even become interested in her over that stupid Sakura girl he told her about. Once she was gone, Hiruzen sighed and rubbed at his beard in contemplation. Naruto-kun, Hinata, and Himawari-chan, they'll be an interesting team, but the question then becomes, who will be on the other teams? Decisions. Academy. As she approached the classroom she had been directed to go to, Himawari took in a deep breath and released it slowly. Okay Himawari, you can do this, don't make the mistake of calling him daddy, Hess Naruto-kun now. She thought to herself determinedly before knocking on the door and opening it slowly. Stepping inside, Himawari walked up to the academy instructor, Iruka Yamino, and handed over the note she had been clutching a little too tightly in her hand. Uncrumpling it, Iruka read it over before giving her a nod and a warm smile. I see, well, welcome to the class Himawari-chan, he said kindly before he turned to the rest of the class. Class, we have a new student joining us today. I know it's a last-minute addition, but Hokage-sama has instructed me that she is to take the graduation exam with the rest of you, so I don't want to hear any complaints from any of you. Got it? He exclaimed. Looking back down at Himawari, Iruka motioned towards the class. Himawari, why don't you introduce yourself to the class? I'm sure someone will be more than happy to know you're here, he said with a wink. Giggling to herself, Himawari nodded in agreement before turning to the class and bowing politely. Hello everyone, my name is Himawari Uzumaki, it's nice to meet all of you. When the class began to murmur amongst themselves, Himawari couldn't help but grin. Looking up at her father, she saw Naruto looking at her wide-eyed in astonishment. That's right daddy, you're paying attention to me now, she thought, her grin widening. Before Naruto could say anything, however, a pink-haired girl stood up and shouted out, does that mean you're related to that idiot Naruto Kami? I feel sorry for you. Clenching her fists at this, Himawari glared hatefully at Sakura and was about to yell back at her, but Iruka beat her to the punch. Sakura. That was uncalled for. Apologize to both of them this instant. Sakura folded her arms across her chest and looked away. Never, she said with a huff. Sighing at this, Iruka said, then you're seeing me after class for detention, and I'm having a talk with your mother about your behavior towards the both of them. I'm sure she's not going to be too pleased with you about this. The pink-haired girl squawked at this and looked at Iruka with wide eyes. What? You can't do that. The academy instructor quirked a brow and folded his arms across his chest before giving her a grin. "Yes, I can, Sakura, now sit down and shut up," he commanded, watching as Sakura sat down with a huff. "Now, does anyone else have any questions for Himawari-chan that don't involve insulting either her or Naruto-kun?" Naruto meekly raised his hand at this point, causing Iruka to point to him. "Yes, Naruto-kun." Looking down at Himawari-chan, the blonde 16-year-old asked, "Is your last name really Uzumaki?" Himawari nodded in response and smiled brightly at him. "Yepers. My name is Himawari Uzumaki of the Uzumaki clan. You and I are distant cousins, Naruto-kun, isn't that great?" She cheered as she threw her fist up into the air excitedly. Naruto's eyes went wide and he looked between her and Iruka, "Theirs, and Uzumaki clan. How come nobody ever told me about that before?" he questioned angrily. Himawari blinked and looked up at Iruka curiously. "You mean, nobody here knows about the Uzumaki clan, Iruka-sensei?" Iruka sighed and scratched at the back of his head. The civilian council, with the backing of the elders, got their hands on the academy and its curriculum quite some time back. They decided to remove all mention of the Uzumaki clan from the curriculum, despite the fact that Konoha and Uzushi Agakure were once allies before Uzushio was destroyed. Personally, I think they were trying to keep Naruto-kun from ever finding out he was part of a clan, either that, or they were trying to cover something up and keep people from asking questions. I'm hoping it's the former though, it would be far less disturbing. Naruto clenched his fists as he heard this, but before he could say anything, someone else beat him to the punch. "You mean that idiot's part of a clan, man? Some clan to have somebody like that loser as a member," Kiba said, getting laughs from most of the classroom. Himawari growled at this and pointed straight at Naruto. "Stop being such jerks to Naruto-kun, damn it. As the last Uzumaki in Konoha, that makes him the clan head. If you ask me, that makes him a hell of a lot better than you." When the class began to laugh even harder, Iruka had finally had enough of it and used his big head technique to quiet them all down. "All of you shut the hell up." The Uzumaki clan were feared by the other nations as one of the strongest clans in existence. They had their own village, for crying out loud. They were renowned for their prowess in Fuinjutsu, the sealing arts. They were also known for their amazing longevity and their high chakra reserves. Hell, the Shodaime Hokage married a woman named Mito Uzumaki. Naruto-kun and Himawari-chan come from an amazing clan, and I will not have you insulting them anymore. Is that understood? Everyone had wide eyes at this sudden wealth of information, looking back and forth from Naruto and Himawari. They didn't quite know what to say. Himawari, however, decided to add one more thing to the pile. To top it all off, it's because of these high chakra reserves and the immense amount of chakra control it takes that we Uzumaki can't perform the regular clone technique. It will always backfire on us. We have to use a different variant, she said as she folded her arms across her chest and nodded her head proudly. Shikamaru piped up at this point, but not before yawning first. That would explain why Naruto's never been able to pull off the clone technique. Iruka-sensei, how come you didn't pick up on such a thing sooner, he questioned curiously. Iruka sighed and facepalmed. "I hadn't actually thought of that at the time. Naruto's goofed off so many times and never really taken much of anything seriously in my class that I always figured he just wasn't trying hard enough or something." Sighing again, the teacher looked up at Naruto apologetically. "Can you ever forgive me for such an oversight, Naruto-kun?" Naruto clenched his fists tight and glared down at his desk angrily. "You mean to tell me that all this time, I couldn't pull off that stupid technique because I have too much chakra? What the hell, Databeo? It's too late now to learn a different clone technique. What am I supposed to do to pass this stupid graduation exam?" he questioned, absolutely furious with the whole situation. Before Iruka could say anything, Himawari took a few steps forward and offered Naruto a smile. "I can teach you the shadow clone technique, Naruto-kun. It's normally pretty dangerous for people to learn, but it's perfect for we Uzumakas, isn't that right, Iruka-sensei?" Iruka thought it over for a time and, after a short while of contemplation, nodded his head in agreement. "If you truly know that technique, then you have my permission to teach it to him, but not in here and not right now. You can teach it to him somewhere in private later, okay, Himawari-chan?" Himawari nodded her head excitedly before she waved at Naruto-kun and gave him a wink. "Y'all love the shadow clone technique, Naruto-kun, I promise." Before Naruto, or anyone else, could say anything more, Iruka turned to Himawari and said, "Okay, I think we've chatted enough for now. Why don't you go take a seat next to Hinata, Himawari-chan?" There's a seat open right beside her. Looking to her mother in this time period, Himawari had to admit that she was beautiful. If she had to admit it to herself, she looked something like a princess. Giggling to herself at that thought, she hurried on up the stairs and sat down beside Hinata, giving her a beaming smile. "Hello, Hinata-chan," Himawari said, inwardly giggling at calling her mother Hinata-chan. "It's really nice to meet you. I already introduced myself before, but I'm Himawari Uzumaki." Hinata offered Himawari a smile and gently shook her hand. "It's nice to meet you, Himawari-chan. Are you really related to Naruto-kun?" Himawari blinked at first, unused to her mother's stuttering, however, understanding what Hinata was asking her, nodded and gave her a beaming smile. Yep. Naruto-kun and I are distant cousins though, so there's hardly any blood actually shared between us, we're just from the same clan really," she lied. Nodding in understanding, Hinata offered her another bright smile and looked past her at Naruto. "I'm glad, and Naruto-kun finally has family, he'll be so happy." Before they could continue their conversation, Iruka clapped his hands to get everyone's attention. "Alright class, it's time to begin the graduation exam. Mizuki here will hand out your test papers. Do not flip them over or begin until I give the signal, is that understood?" He questioned, watching as Mizuki went around the room, handing out the test papers. When Mizuki reached her, she could easily tell that he had a fake smile on his face. His eyes told an entirely different story, however, for some reason he seemed to loathe her, and she didn't know why. Deciding to put that thought to the side for now, she waited for the signal to begin came and flipped over her test paper. Looking down at it, she blinked a couple of times before she silently activated her Byakugan, startling Hinata and causing her to gasp. Eyes widening in realization at what she had just done, Himawari turned to Hinata and held her finger up to her mouth, telling her to be quiet. "I'll explain later, I promise," Himawari whispered quietly to her mother. Seeing Hinata nod somewhat hesitantly, Himawari accepted that response and looked back at her test paper to see that her suspicions were proven true. Glancing towards Naruto's test paper, she could see him struggling with the questions and realized why that was, as his test paper had been tampered with as well, so, deactivating her Byakugan, she raised her hand and glared down at Iruka. "Iruka-sensei, is it a normal practice to place genjutsu on students' tests?" she questioned angrily. Iruka blinked at this and, after standing from his chair, walked up the stairs to take a look at Himawari's test. "Well, this isn't right, here Himawari-chan, release," he exclaimed, dispelling the genjutsu placed on her test. "There you go, I wonder how that happened." Himawari tugged on Iruka's sleeve and motioned for him to lean down, whispering in his ear when he did. She told him, "Your partner, Mizuki, placed a genjutsu on Naruto-kun's test as well. He dosed like Naruto-kun for some reason, I could see it in his eyes as he looked at us." Iruka slowly nodded his head in understanding before he walked over to Naruto and took a look at his test to see he had yet to answer any of the questions. Looking over his test, the teacher sighed and quickly dispelled the genjutsu on his test as well. "There you go Naruto-kun, it looks like somebody put a genjutsu on your test as well. Somebody wants to see you both fail," he said, shooting a quick glare at Mizuki that said, "We need to have a talk." Mizuki scowled and clenched his fists at his sides, furious that some little brat of an Uzumaki had seen through him like that. Still, just because the genjutsu has been dispelled doesn't mean he'll be able to answer any of the questions. He is an idiot, after all, he thought to himself confidently. As Iruka returned to his seat, Hinata leaned close to Himawari's ear and whispered, "Thank you, Mizuki-sensei has always been so mean to Naruto-kun, I don't know why." Himawari frowned at this and, as she was filling out her own test, whispered to Hinata, "If you knew, why haven't you said anything before now?" Hinata flinched and, after filling out the rest of the answers, turned her test paper over and sighed as she placed her pencil down. "I am always too timid and shy to do anything about it, I try, but..." Himawari frowned at this and looked at her mother after turning her own paper over. Now that she had finished with the test, "Didn't Naruto-kun save you from bullies when you were younger? You should have the courage to stand up and do what's right for him just as he did for you, or has your clan really damaged your self-confidence this much?" Hinata could feel tears brimming in her eyes as she looked past Himawari at Naruto and shook her head. Looking back into Himawari's eyes, Hinata began poking her fingers together in her usual nervous habit and began to speak. I sighing. Hinata nodded once. "Yes, they have Himawari-chan, father, is cruel, and the elders are even crueler than him. I'm just a failure in their eyes. I can never do anything right, and they forbade me from spending time with Naruto-kun after he saved me. I think that did something to Naruto-kun too, because he doesn't seem to remember me at all." Himawari sighed at this and shook her head before glaring into her mother's eyes. "Fine then, we're going to have to work on your self-confidence and turn you into a badass kunoichi that can win Naruto-kun's heart, starting today. Got it Hinata-chan?" Hinata blushed badly and looked wide-eyed at Himawari, not having expected such talk from her. Win Naruto-kun's heart. What?" she asked as she began to feel woozy from all the blood rushing to her head. The Uzumaki girl blinked as she saw her mother go an atomic red and nearly pass out. Hinata-chan. Are you okay?" The young Hyuga heiress nodded slowly as she fought to keep from fainting. After a moment, she lost herself to her fantasies and began to giggle. "And Naruto-kun and me." Himawari sighed and facepalmed herself. "I can't believe mom was ever this shy." I've really got my work cut out for me here, she thought to herself disappointedly. Later, the class was outside for the Taijutsu portion of the exam now. They had already taken the Shuriken Jutsu portion of the test, but once again, Himawari had noticed a problem there. When Mizuki had given her and Naruto their sets, she noticed that they were dull and would have practically zero chance of penetrating their targets, so, once again, she had informed Iruka of that, and both she and Naruto had received fresh sets, while Iruka went off to lecture Mizuki about what he had been doing. Needless to say, Himawari had passed with flying colors, while Naruto had managed to score a 6/10 with kunai and a 7/10 with shuriken, which was enough for him to pass as well. She knew she'd have to work with him a while to get his skills up to snuff, but she didn't mind that, as it meant she'd get to spend more time with her hubby-to-be. Now, while the other students were being called up one pair at a time to take the Taijutsu exam, Himawari was instructed to take Naruto aside to teach him the shadow clone technique, so, the young Uzumaki woman had taken her future father around the corner of the academy building and smiled kindly at him. "Alright Naruto-kun, as promised, I'm going to teach you how to perform the shadow clone technique. It only requires a single hand seal to perform, and it's really easy to get down, as you don't really need to fine-tune your chakra control at first to perform it, so you should be able to get this down pretty easily," she explained. Showing him the hand seal to use, she spiked her chakra and shouted out, "Shadow clone technique." Before, in a burst of smoke, two exact copies of her appeared at her sides. As this happened, however, a thought crossed her mind. "Ooh, imagine the possibilities of shadow clones in the bedroom. Naruto-kun would love having three of me rubbing up against him, he won't be able to resist making love to me then." But wait. Eyes widening, Himawari started going really red in the face. "Naruto-kun could use shadow clones to take me in all three of my holes. Oh Kami, how wonderful that would be. Ooh. And I could use my hands to get off two more of his clones too. Anything to make my darling Naru-kun feel great." Naruto waved his hand in front of Himawari's face as she just went redder and redder in the face. It was then he could smell a strange scent coming from her. Sniffing a couple of times, he looked her in the eyes and asked, "What's that smell?" At first, Himawari looked embarrassed and afraid that he had found her out, but then she noticed a certain part of Naruto's anatomy was beginning to stand at attention. Giggling to herself, she sashayed up to him and reached up to gently stroke his whiskers. Naruto-kun, are you attracted to me by any chance?" she teased. The teenage blonde began to blush and shifted in place a bit as he glanced away. "Why, you are pretty Himawari-chan, but I like Sakura-chan, I'm sorry." Narrowing her eyes at this, Himawari stared at her father in a deadpan, unable to believe he had just said that. Sighing softly, she decided to just get on with their lesson so they could return to the others. "You really know how to kill the mood Naruto-kun," she said before releasing another sigh. "Come on, do as I showed you, try to perform the shadow clone technique." Nodding his head, Naruto looked at her with excitement before he performed the hand seal and spiked his chakra before shouting, "Shadow clone technique." A large puff of smoke appeared next to them, and when it cleared, there were 13 copies of Naruto standing around them. As the man she loved cheered in excitement for pulling off the technique, Himawari's mind went straight to the gutter and she began to giggle perversely. So many Naruto-kuns, oh the possibilities. I wonder if I could just. When Naruto felt a hand caressing his penis through his tracksuit pants, he blushed furiously and accidentally dispelled all of his clones at once. Himawari-chan. What are you doing?" he questioned nervously. Stepping around in front of her future father, she leaned in and pressed her lips to his, kissing him deeply. When he just stood there dumbfounded, she grabbed his dick hard, causing him to gasp into the kiss. This action allowed her to move her tongue into his mouth and begin probing around to get a real taste of him. Naruto blushed furiously at what was happening to him. Here was this beautiful girl that he had just met, and she was kissing him. What was going on here? Unable to grasp the situation, he didn't respond for a while, even though she continued to squeeze his cock harder. Eventually though, he got the message and began to return her kiss. Although it was an awkward first attempt at doing so, this was his first kiss after all. Feeling her one true love finally returning her kiss, Himawari did a victory dance inside her mind. Slowly, ever so slowly, she released her grip on her love's penis. Instead, she slid her hand into his pants and began to pump his cock, causing him to gasp into the kiss again. After a short while, she pulled back from the kiss and began to nibble on his neck. Slowly, she began to kiss and nibble her way up to his ear where she whispered, "This is what true affection is, Naruto-kun. Making the other person feel good, not just like this, but making them feel good about themselves as well. That Sakura bitch doesn't show you the kind of affection you deserve. In fact, what she's done to you isn't affection at all. It's time you learn the difference, and I'm more than willing to show you everything you've missed out on all your life, Naruto-kun," she said huskily as she moved to nibbling on his ear. Naruto groaned from the pleasure he was feeling, unable to help himself. However, something Himawari said struck him, and he couldn't help but speak up. "But, Sakura-chan was my first friend. Ouch. he exclaimed, feeling Himawari crushing his dick again the moment he tried to stand up for his precious Sakura-chan. Himawari glared at Naruto angrily. You really need to think before you speak sometimes, Naruto-kun, especially when a girl is holding you by the dick. Good point, Himawari-chan, he said, wincing in agony as she squeezed tighter. Smiling a little too sweetly at Naruto, Himawari began to speak again. Now, I'm going to ask you a few questions and you're going to answer them honestly. Try to lie to me, and I'll slowly crush it, understand me? Nodding quickly, Naruto said, why yes, Himawari-chan. I understand. But boy, Himawari said, now, for my first question. Who does Sakura have a crush on? You or Sasuke? Naruto began to clench his fists at his side and looked away from Himawari at this point. Sasuke, it's always that. Nah, Naruto-kun, enough of that, Himawari said, trying to get him back on focus. Second question. What does Sakura do whenever you try to talk to her? Outing at this point, the blonde Uzumaki lowered his head and said, Sakura-chan is always hitting me, I don't know why. Third question. Do you want to be in an abusive relationship? Himawari asked. Naruto frowned at this and shook his head in the negative. No. Who the heck would want to be in a relationship like that? Final question. If Sakura like Sasuke always hits you and you don't want to be in an abusive relationship, why do you continue to pine after her like this? She asked with a frown on her face. At first, Naruto just wanted to yell at Himawari in defense of Sakura, but then, when he took a moment to really think on it, he came to a realization, because she's the only one that's ever paid any attention to me, even though it was negative, so long as I was acknowledged, I thought it would be okay, he said quietly. Frowning at this, Himawari wrapped her free hand around his back and hugged him close. It's okay, Naruto-kun, what if I told you that you won't have to feel like that anymore? That there is somebody in your class that's always noticed you, would you be willing to at least talk to her and get to know her better? The whiskered blonde blinked in shock at this, but soon looked into Himawari's eyes and nodded slowly. Please. I'd really like that. Who is it? Himawari smiled and kissed his cheek. Sweetie, I'm talking about Hinata Hyuga, she's in love with you, silly. And just so you know, leaning in, she kissed Naruto's lips again before smiling sweetly at him. I'm in love with you too. You may not know me yet, but I know plenty about you, so please believe me when I tell you that my love for you runs so deep it hurts. Blushing fiercely now, Naruto was about to say something when his new friend began to pump his cock once again, letting out a moan. Naruto leaned against Himawari and asked, is that why you're doing this? Because. Himawari grinned and nodded before kissing him again. Yes, sweetheart, because I love you, I've dreamt about doing this, and so much more with you. Leaning in close, she whispered to him, I want you so bad right now, Naruto-kun, if only we had a little more time, I'd take you right here. The blonde Jinchuriki turned a deep red at this and looked her in the eyes, his own eyes going wide in shock. Why you mean that? Giggling in response, Himawari winked at him before she removed her hand from his pants, causing him to whimper. Oh, does my Naruto-kun want me to get him off before we go back to the others? Seeing him nod made Himawari's heart flutter, however, because she was still upset with him for talking about Sakura earlier, she turned around and began walking off back towards the others. Too bad, this is your punishment, and if you don't know what for, then you are an idiot. Naruto whimpered pitifully as he tried hard to will his member to go back down. It won't do to go back to the others with his little buddy standing at attention. As he watched Himawari walk off around the corner, he thought about what he could have done to piss her off, and when the answer came to him, he facepalmed. I'm an idiot, he said. Pissed at himself for ruining what was definitely a sure thing with a girl that was a freaking babe. Later, as she waited for her turn to get up and perform the Academy 3, as she was used to hearing the 3 techniques called, Himawari sat talking with Hinata about their favorite subject. Naruto Uzumaki, I always knew Naruto-kun was special, but I didn't know he was from a clan, and on top of that, has a C clan head now. Who were his parents? Himawari frowned and shook her head sadly. That's a closely guarded secret, so I can't tell you right now, but I promise to tell you later when we're alone. I have a lot I need to tell you, Hinata-chan, that I can't say until we can be alone together. Nodding in understanding, Hinata looked into Himawari's eyes and shook her head. I still can't believe you have the B by Akugan, if father finds out. Scowling angrily at this, Himawari slammed her fist down on the desk, startling those around her, before staring hard into Hinata's eyes. And Uzumaki, damn it. I'm a member of another clan, he can't do anything to me, least of all brand me with that accursed seal. If he tries, I'm willing to bet that Hokage-sama won't stand for it. Smiling at her new friend, Hinata couldn't help but admire her for not just her boldness, but for her confidence as well. I wish I could be as confident as why you are, Himawari-chan, she said, feeling a little dejected. Sighing, the teenage Uzumaki girl hugged Hinata and patted her back gently. You'll be fine, Hinata-chan, I promise that it'll help you to become a much more confident woman, one that will definitely be worthy of Naruto-kun. Hinata went red in the face and began to stammer, however, before she could get any words out, Himawari Himawari was called to go to the other room and perform the Academy 3, so, waving goodbye to Hinata, the blue-haired Uzumaki got up to leave the room, however, as she walked down the stairs, she turned and blew a kiss to Naruto, causing him to blush. Once she had left the room, Kiba turned to Naruto and said, "You dude, hitting on your own cousin like that. That's just sick." Sakura couldn't help but chime in with her 2 cents as well, "The mutt's right, you're nothing but a twisted pervert Naruto." When the class erupted into laughter, Naruto covered his ears with his hands and muttered quietly to himself, "Shut up, please, just shut up." Hinata, one of the few not laughing at him, watched him as tears began to trickle down his cheeks. "I'm so tired of them picking on Naruto-kun like this. It's just so wrong," Hinata said quietly, "You're wrong." Standing up, Hinata glared around the room before shouting at the top of her lungs, "Stop it. All of you just shut up and leave Naruto-kun alone already." Needless to say, the mere fact that Hinata yelling at them like that was enough to stun them into silence, however, the fact that she was defending Naruto of all people left them even more stunned than the fact she actually yelled at them in the first place. "You're also wrong about him. Naruto-kun is not a pervert. He's a gentle kind person. But all of you are just so cruel to him. You're cruel to him without having any reason to be. I bet that over half of you are just mean to him because everyone else is. Well, I've had it. I won't tolerate your abuse of him any longer. So think before you say anything else to him, because I swear to Kami that the next person that makes fun of him is going to get hurt badly," she threatened, a fierce look on her face. Naruto stared at Hinata in stunned silence as he wiped away his tears. Here was this kind, gentle soul standing up for him when nobody else would. She said all these kind things about him and was even threatening to harm people that made fun of him. She really does love me, doesn't she? He wondered. When Hinata looked his way, he quietly said, "Thank you, Hinata-chan." Hinata beamed at him and was about to say something, but a certain pink-haired bitch beat her to it. "Why the heck are you standing up for that freak of nature? Don't tell me you actually like him," Sakura questioned in a disbelieving tone. The blonde Uzumaki growled and clenched his fists tight. "Why is it so wrong for somebody to actually like me? Do you really have that much of a problem with me, Sakura?" When Sakura went to shout at him, Hinata walked up to her and struck her numerous times, sending her crashing to the floor. "How dare you act as if having feelings for someone other than your precious Sasuke-kun is a crime. Sasuke's an asshole. There, I said it. He doesn't acknowledge any of you and he treats you like dirt. Naruto-kun, on the other hand, is kind to everybody. Yes, he may not be as skilled as Sasuke right now, but Naruto-kun works harder than anybody else here. Soon enough, he'll be stronger than all of you, I'm sure of it. I believe in him and I always have." Glaring at everyone, one person at a time, Hinata was practically daring them to speak out against her precious Naruto-kun now. When one person scoffed, she turned to see Sasuke glaring at her. "The dope will never be better than me. How dare you insinuate as such a weakling?" Hinata stared at Sasuke for a moment, almost as if she couldn't believe he had just said that. Then, she dashed towards him and, before he could react, she struck his Tenketsu and disabled him, just as she had Sakura. "I'm no weakling, Sasuke. In a match against you, I guarantee I'd win hands down. You're weak, Sasuke. You always will be too, and don't you ever insult Naruto-kun again, or it'll do far worse to you than this," she exclaimed before punching him in the face and walking away. Then Sasuke's fangirls, led by Ino, as Sakura was still lying on the floor in the middle of the classroom, began to charge at her for attacking their precious Sasuke-kun. Hinata prepared to fight them all off, however, Naruto soon got in their way, throwing his arms out wide and glaring at all of them. "Leave her alone. Hinata-chan didn't do anything wrong. If you want to hurt her, you'll have to go through me first." Ino and the fangirls began to laugh as they advanced on Naruto while cracking their fists. They were more than ready to begin a beatdown on the Uzumaki Jinchuriki. However, before they could, Iruka stepped into the room with Himawari at his side, her sporting a brand new headband, and glared at everyone. "What the hell is going on in here?" he demanded to know. Kiba piped up with, "The dobe started at Iruka-sensei. He started insulting everyone and making a ruckus. It just pissed people off is all." Blaring at Kiba for his lie, Hinata was shocked when all the other students started collaborating his story. Shaking in fury, she shouted, "All of you, shut the hell up. Stop lying like that." Iruka, shocked by the sudden outburst, looked at Hinata with wide eyes full of surprise. Shaking his head after a while, he put on a smile and asked her, "Hinata-chan, tell me the truth, what really happened here? I know Naruto-kun wouldn't have done something like that, especially not without a reason for it." Himawari smiled up at Iruka-sensei, thankful that he'd believe in her father this much. Looking back at Naruto and Hinata, she waited to hear what had happened in her absence. "One thing happened for sure while I was gone. Mom grew a backbone all on her own. I'm impressed," she thought happily. Nodding her head in thanks to Iruka, Hinata began to explain. "It started when Himawari-chan was leaving the room. She blew a kiss to Naruto-kun, Kiba, and Sakura made fun of him, calling him a perverted freak of nature. Then, almost everybody in class joined in, either making fun of him some more or laughing at him. I saw it, Iruka-sensei. Naruto-kun was crying and begging them to stop. she exclaimed as she clenched her fists at her side. Hinata watched Himawari as she began to tremble in anger, nodding in appreciation at this. Hinata looked back into Iruka's eyes and began to speak again. I finally had enough of it and I stood up to them. I yelled at them to all shut up. I tried to get them to see that what they were doing was hurtful. But then, that bitch down there, Hinata said, pointing at Sakura, dared to act as if me being in love with Naruto-kun and not their precious Asuka-kun is some kind of crime. She acted as if anyone liking Naruto-kun was wrong. So yes, I hit her and am not apologizing for it. Naruto went a deep red at Hinata's admission of her feelings for him, however, he remained quiet and just continued to listen to her. When Hinata realized what she had said, her entire face went red, and she looked at Naruto with wide eyes to see how he'd react to such an admission, when he simply smiled at her. She breathed a sigh of relief before turning back to continue telling Iruka what happened. Anyways, after that, I tried to explain that Naruto-kun may not be a prodigy like Sasuke, but he works harder than anyone else. Pretty soon, he'll be stronger than anyone in this class. But, that stupid jerk, Sasuke, dared to make fun of him, saying that Naruto could never be as strong as him or even surpass him. After all, Sasuke thinks he's perfect the way he is, and for that matter. I also tried to make the fangirls see that Naruto-kun is a much better guy, because, unlike Sasuke, Naruto actually acknowledges people and treats everyone with kindness. Sasuke, on the other hand, doesn't acknowledge any of his fangirls, and he treats them all like they're worth less than dirt. But did my words get through to any of them? I highly doubted. Iruka sighed as he heard all of this, not quite able to believe all that he had just heard. Shy little Hinata had finally come out of her shell and started yelling at people, stood up for Naruto, and even hit someone. Then again, when he looked at her, Hinata looked like she was feeling far more confident, but then he noticed something and just had to ask, so, why are Sasuke's fangirls surrounding you and Naruto like that? You never told me why they were threatening to hit you. Naruto growled at this point and shook his head. Hinata-chan struck the team too. His fangirls got angry and threatened to hurt her. I got in the way to protect her. That's the gist of it, Iruka-sensei. Nodding his head in understanding, Iruka looked around at everyone and said, everyone, please return to your seats. I'll deal with all of this later. For now, Naruto Uzumaki, please come with me, he said before leaving the room. When Naruto turned to walk down the stairs, he was shocked when Hinata stopped him with a hand on his chest. When he turned to look into her eyes to ask her what she wanted, she leaned in and pressed her lips against his cheek before beaming at him. Good luck, Naruto-kun. I know you can pass this time, blushing profusely. The whiskered blonde nodded slowly and made his way past Himawari and out of the room without a word. Once he was gone, Himawari turned to the class and began cracking her knuckles. So, you like making fun of Naruto-kun, huh? I thought you were warned not to pick on him anymore by Iruka-sensei. You don't listen very well, do you? Iba scoffed at that and folded his arms across his chest. The dope deserves it, Hess brought it all on himself. And we have volunteer number 1. Himawari declared before she disappeared and reappeared with her fist buried in Kiba's face, sending him crashing through the desk behind him. Any more volunteers for my super fist attack? She questioned, just waiting for anyone dumb enough to talk bad about her beloved Naruto-kun. Hinata found herself smirking at this and walked up to Himawari. Hey Hima-chan, think you could teach me the secret behind your super fist sometime? I'd love to learn it, if only to put these idiots in their place when they make the mistake of badmouthing Naruto-kun in front of me. The teenage Uzumaki smiled happily at her mother and hugged her tight. Of course I'll teach you, Hina-chan. I'd be more than happy to. Everyone in the class shivered at the thought of having two people knowing this powerful super fist move. Ino, however, frowned as she began to speak. Why do you like that idiot so much anyways? I just don't get it. Hinata glared at Ino and started stalking towards her, but a hand on her shoulder stopped her. Looking back to see who it was, she saw Himawari was the one stopping her from beating the crap out of the blonde Yamanaka teen. It'll tell you why I love him, Himawari said. Naruto-kun's a really nice person, Hess handsome, Hess got those really cute whisker marks on his face, Hess going to be a really strong ninja, so that's a plus, and, despite what you might think, Hess not stupid, Naruto is actually an intelligent person, Hess just never been allowed to show it before. I could probably list some more reasons about why I love him so much, but I think I've said more than enough. Hinata looked at Himawari with a shocked expression on her face. This girl was in love with her Naruto-kun too, shaking it off. Hinata looked at Ino and shrugged. My reasons are pretty much the same as hers, but it helps that I've watched him from time to time, and I've seen how hard he works to improve himself. On top of that, Naruto-kun is someone I can relate to. But something happened back on the very first day we started the academy that really drew me to him. I was being picked on by bullies because I'm different, Naruto-kun, despite the fact that he was outnumbered, rescued me from them, but he got hurt trying to protect me. Naruto is a selfless person, I can't help but love him. Ino's mouth opened and closed a couple of times as she tried to think of something to say in response to that. After a short while of this, she finally gave a small smile and said, well, damn, I can't say anything bad about any of you now, not after you two go and say something like that. that, it makes my crush on Sasuke-kun seem, well, it makes my crush seem stupid now that I think about it, she admitted. Hinata smiled at this, glad that at least someone understood their feelings. Before she or Himawari could say anything though, the door opened again and Iruka walked in with Naruto, who was sporting a headband of his own, looking at the blonde. Both girls smiled brightly at him and he smiled back, "Congratulations Naruto-kun." Both girls exclaimed as one. Naruto walked up to them and hugged them both. "Thank you, and thank you Himawari for teaching me the shadow clone technique, because of you, I was able to finally pass, I'm so grateful." Ino stepped closer and opened her mouth to speak, but before she could, Iruka called for Ino to follow him, sighing. The blue-eyed young woman walked past the three of them and left the room with Iruka to go and take the test. He'll apologize to them later, especially to Naruto, she thought. Back in the room, as the family of three went to return to their seats, they heard Sasuke say, "Of course the weakling got beat up by those fools. I would never have lost to such weaklings, but then again, I suppose a weakling falling in love with a weakling is only natural." Hinata scowled and was about to go over and strike him again, but Himawari beat her to the punch, landing a super fist attack to Sasuke's chest, causing him to scream out in pain. "You're the weakling Sasuke, now shut up if you know what's good for you," she said before returning to her seat with Hinata and Naruto doing the same. "Kami, I can't believe that guy is Sarada-chan's father. That's a total douchebag." Sakura stood up at this point and pointed at Hinata and Himawari. "Why do you two keep hitting Sasuke-kun? You should show him some respect. Sasuke-kun's the best, damn it. If you two keep attacking him like that, ill." Naruto sighed at this point and spoke up. "Y'all what Sakura? Y'all do nothing, I'm tired of your abuse and they are tired of seeing it happen, we won't take it anymore, if you try anything, they're likely to break your wrist, so please don't try." The pin cat glared at him and shouted, "Don't tell me what to do you idiot. And what do you mean abuse? I don't abuse you. You get what you deserve," she declared with a decisive nod. Himawari got up from her seat and started stomping her way toward Sakura, a truly hateful look on her face. "Wrong thing to say Sakura." Sakura huffed as she watched Himawari step closer and closer. "I'm not afraid of you, you're just a weak little girl in love with a weak idiot, you're practically perfect for each other." Growling at this, the beautiful blue-haired teenager charged forward and slammed her fist into Sakura's face as hard as she could, sending her flying backwards into the blackboard. Afterwards, she pumped her fist into the air and cheered, "Super fist for the win." Before turning around and returning to her seat once again. When Iruka and Mizuki returned with Ino a short while later, it was to find Sakura unconscious at the front of the room with a nasty bruise forming over the bridge of her nose and on part of her forehead. Sighing, Iruka approached her and helped her up. "Let me guess, Hinata-chan again." Sakura groaned and rubbed at her forehead in agony. "And no Iruka-sensei, it was Himawari, she's the one that hit me, she hit Mutt-boy and Sasuke-kun too." Looking up at Himawari, the academy instructor sighed and shook his head. "Mind explaining yourself Himawari-chan?" Himawari chuckled sheepishly and began poking her fingers together in the same way her mother used to do. First off, they each deserved it. Kiba said that Naruto-kun deserves to be treated like crap, despite you telling them to stop treating him so terribly, so I hit him with my super fist attack. Sasuke insulted Hinata-chan, Naruto-kun, and me, saying that weaklings like us deserve one another. He made fun of Naruto-kun for losing against the three bullies that were picking on Hinata-chan in the first year of the academy, too, so, again, I hit him. As for Sakura looking down at the pink-haired bitch, she snarled at her, she threatened Hinata-chan and me. She told Naruto that he deserves to be abused and that what she does to him isn't abuse, but something he deserves, etc. She was just being a massive bitch, so I hit her too. Iruka sighed and shook his head in exasperation. "Be that as it may, you shouldn't go around hitting people just because they say things you don't like. For that behavior, I'm going to have to give you and Hinata-chan both detention. Yes, on the final day of the academy, I'm sorry." Sakura smirked up at Himawari and Hinata and was about to say something, but Iruka noticed her look and shook his head. "I'm also going to have to keep Kiba, Sasuke, and you, Sakura, after class for detention as well for provoking such a reaction from them. You were all in the wrong here and you're all going to be punished for it." At hearing this, Sasuke's fangirls blew up, enraged that Iruka was giving their darling Sasuke-kun detention, especially on the final day of the academy. "Shut up, all of you." He shouted at them. Sasuke brought it on himself. "Now, for those of you who passed the exam, congratulations. I'm looking forward to seeing you next week for team placements. The rest of you, better luck next year. Now, everyone is dismissed, except those of you who are staying after class for detention." As the teenagers began to file out of the room to go on home, Naruto saw Sasuke, Sakura, and Kiba trying to sneak out with them and shook his head. "Iruka-sensei, they're trying to get away," he said before walking over to Hinata and Himawari to say goodbye to them. Iruka, hearing this, looked up from what he was was doing and glared as he saw what Naruto was talking about. Moving quickly, he blocked the door and pointed back towards their desks. "Back to your seats you three. You're stuck here until I say you can go home. Try to sneak out again, and you can expect me to take this up with Hokage-sama." Grumbling about this, the three of them returned to their seats, but not before shooting Naruto a glare for ratting them out. Sticking his tongue out at them, Naruto turned back to Hinata and Himawari. "I'll see you two later, right?" "Of course Naruto-kun, you won't be able to get rid of me," Himawari said with a bright smile on her face. "I'll try to get out of the compound when I can to come see you Naruto-kun, I promise," Hinata said before hugging Naruto and kissing his cheek again. "See you later Naruto-kun." Smiling at them, Naruto said goodbye to the both of them before leaving the room to make his way home. However, as he left the academy, his stomach rumbled and he found himself taking a detour to head for Ramen Ichiraku. "I suppose a little food can't hurt," he said to himself. Later that night, after eating, Naruto had returned home to rest for a little while before heading out again to meet with his two new friends so they could spend some time together. When he arrived at the academy, it was already evening and they were just then walking out of the academy together. When they saw him, they hurried over to him and the three of them began to walk away, talking with each other the entire time. Now, however, it was rather dark out and it was time to walk Hinata home to the Hyuga compound. As they walked though, they noticed someone leaping away from the Hokage tower with something large strapped to his back. On top of that, this mystery person was making his way towards the woods, obviously trying to escape the village. Looking at each other, the three nodded and quickly leapt off after the mysterious figure. When they caught up to him, they saw him standing over the scroll, cackling to himself as he looked over its contents, muttering to himself all the while. When they got a good look at him, they realized who this person was. "Hey, isn't that Mizuki-sensei? What's he doing?" Naruto asked quietly. Hinata frowned and shook her head. "I don't know Naruto-kun, but I'm willing to bet that it's not good. We need to stop him." Nodding in agreement, the three of them split up and began creeping around to form a triangular blockade of sorts, trapping him between them. Then, they each withdrew a handful of shuriken and threw them at the white-haired academy instructor. However, when Mizuki became shrouded in a puff of smoke and was replaced with a log, they knew he had found them out. The next thing they knew, Hinata screamed as she was kicked from behind into the small forest clearing next to the scroll. Despite the fact that he wanted nothing more than to rush down there and help her up and make sure she was okay, Naruto stayed hidden to wait for his chance to make a move. So, looking around, he began to search for Mizuki. Damn it, where the hell is he? When he heard a whirring sound, he quickly jumped up and flipped backwards, right in time for the shuriken thrown at him to impact the tree he was hiding behind. When he landed, he turned around to see Mizuki glaring down at him from up in a tree. "TCH, I had hoped that would have killed you, demon. It looks like I'm going to have to try a little harder," he said before reaching back to draw one of his larger shuriken, called a Fuma shuriken, and prepared to throw it. Glaring up at Mizuki, Naruto formed the hand seal for his new favorite technique and cried out, "Shadow clone technique." All throughout the forest around them appeared well over 100 Narutos. Pointing at Mizuki, Naruto shouted out, "Let's get him." Mizuki, not having expected Naruto to summon this many clones, quickly threw his oversized shuriken, taking out as many as he could, before turning to try and run away. However, before he could, Himawari appeared and landed a palm strike to his gut, sending him crashing into the ground below. Before he could stand up, the many Narutos began to pummel him until he passed out. "Woohoo. We did it." Now, what was it he was looking at Hinata-chan? Naruto asked as he and Himawari dragged Mizuki back into the clearing to see what he had stolen. Hinata shook her head with a frown. "I think this belongs to Hokage-sama, Naruto-kun. It looks like it contains a bunch of forbidden techniques. Just look at this one. It supposedly revives the dead, but at the cost of taking another's life." Naruto cringed at that. "Yeesh, I can see why a technique like that would be forbidden then," he said. "Indeed Naruto-kun. Now, might I ask what you three are doing here with the scroll of seals?" The familiar voice of the Sandaime Hokage questioned them as he arrived on the scene with his Anbu. Looking around at all of them, Naruto began to sweat nervously. "Oh boy, how do we explain this one?" He wondered aloud. This was going to be a long night, he could see it now. Thanks for watched.